In 1954, a prominent social psychologist named Leon Festinger managed to infiltrate a highly secretive apocalyptic cult. The group was led by a woman who claimed to receive direct messages from outer space, warning her that a catastrophic, planet-wide flood would completely destroy the Earth on midnight of December 21st. A small group of fanatical followers abandoned their jobs, gave away their life savings, and completely severed ties with their families to prepare for rescue by a fictional alien spacecraft. Festinger was not interested in the cult itself, but in a profound question about the human architecture: what happens to a person's mind when their most deeply held belief is completely shattered by reality? When midnight arrived and passed in absolute silence, the cult members faced a brutal psychological crossroad. To an outside observer, the rational response would be to admit they were wrong, accept the reality of the situation, and return to their normal lives. But human biology does not operate on pure logic. Instead of abandoning the cult, the members experienced a bizarre behavioral shift. They became significantly more fanatical, desperately trying to convince the public that their intense prayer had single-handedly saved the planet. This exact historical event revealed one of the most unsettling mechanisms built into human psychology. When faced with undeniable hard facts that prove we are wrong, our minds do not adjust to the truth. Instead, they actively distort our perception of reality to protect our fragile sense of identity. Every day, your subconscious mind is playing this exact same trick on you. It is constructing an invisible wall of delusion simply to shield you from the pain of your own mistakes. This is the terrifying reality of ego preservation. The psychological friction exposed by the apocalyptic cult is a universal human phenomenon known today as cognitive dissonance. Coined by Leon Festinger, this term describes the intense mental discomfort a person experiences when they simultaneously hold two contradictory beliefs, ideas, or values. It also occurs when a person is confronted with new information that directly conflicts with their existing worldview or past actions. To the human mind, inner consistency is not just a preference, it is a fundamental survival mechanism. When your actions do not line up with your beliefs, or when the external world aggressively disproves your internal narrative, a state of psychological crisis is triggered. This conflict creates an internal tension the brain perceives as a direct threat to its stability. Imagine believing you are a highly rational, intelligent person, only to realize you have spent months pouring your life savings into a delusion. The gap between who you think you are and what you have actually done creates an agonizing psychological tear. Human nature cannot tolerate this division for long, because you cannot change the past action, and because changing your entire identity is too terrifying to contemplate. Your brain must find an immediate alternative escape route. It must resolve the discrepancy at all costs, even if it means abandoning reality itself. This is not a conscious choice made by weak or foolish individuals. It is an automated, hardwired defensive maneuver executed by the subconscious architecture of every single human being on this planet. Whenever you feel an intense wave of anger, defensiveness, or immediate denial when someone corrects a mistake you made, you are not reacting to the other person. You are experiencing the raw, unfiltered onset of cognitive dissonance, as your mind desperately scrambles to patch over a sudden crack in its foundation. To truly understand why the mind fights so aggressively against the truth, we must move past abstract philosophy and look directly at neurobiology. Modern neuroscience has revealed that cognitive dissonance is not merely a conceptual disagreement in your thoughts, it is a physical event inside your skull. When researchers place individuals inside functional magnetic resonance imaging scanners and present them with facts that directly contradict their deep-seated political or personal beliefs, a specific part of the brain lights up immediately. This area is the anterior cingulate cortex, the exact same neural network responsible for processing physical pain and detecting errors in our environment. When your core beliefs are challenged, your brain does not process it as a friendly debate or an educational opportunity. It processes it as a literal physical attack on your body. The psychological discomfort you feel when you are proven wrong uses the exact same neural pathways as touching a hot stove or sustaining a physical injury. Because the brain is evolutionarily programmed to avoid pain at all costs, it treats the incoming truth as a dangerous enemy that must be neutralized immediately. To stop this neural alarm from firing, the mind deploys an array of sophisticated defense mechanisms designed to dull the pain and restore internal peace. It does this by releasing chemicals that calm the stress response the moment you find a way to dismiss the painful truth. In a very literal sense, your biology is incentivized to stay blind. Your brain would rather keep you trapped in a comfortable lie than force you to endure the neural agony of accepting an uncomfortable truth. Understanding this biological trap is the first crucial step toward mastering your own mind. When this internal neurological pain alarm goes off, the brain instantly shifts its primary objective away from finding the truth and redirects all energy toward a single task: ego preservation. Your ego is the psychological framework you construct to define who you are, your moral standing, your intelligence, and your place in the world. It is the story you tell yourself about yourself. Because admitting a fundamental mistake destroys that story, the subconscious treats an assault on the ego exactly like an assault on your physical life. To survive, the mind constructs an invisible, highly advanced shield of defense mechanisms. The primary function of this shield is not to alter the external world, but to alter how you perceive it. The mind will aggressively edit your memories, rewrite history, minimize the importance of the threat, or completely vilify the source of the conflicting information. If a reputable scientist presents facts that disrupt your worldview, your subconscious will immediately seek out reasons to label that scientist as corrupt or incompetent. By attacking the messenger, your brain successfully avoids having to process the message, thereby avoiding the pain of dissonance. This process happens entirely below your conscious awareness. You genuinely believe you are being logical, fair, and objective, while your subconscious is working behind the scenes like a corrupt lawyer, burying evidence and manipulating facts just to keep your self-esteem intact. The ego demands protection, and it will happily sacrifice objective reality to get it. The primary weapon your ego deploys to protect itself is a process called rationalization. When we experience cognitive dissonance, we do not simply sit in discomfort. We immediately begin spinning a web of false narratives to bridge the gap between our ideals and our actions. Rationalization is the art of inventing a highly logical, deeply comforting excuse for an illogical or destructive choice. Consider a person who prides themselves on being highly health conscious and deeply educated on biology, yet they continue to smoke cigarettes or maintain a highly destructive diet. The clash between their identity as a healthy person and their action as a self-destructive person creates massive psychological friction. To survive this dissonance without changing their behavior, the mind creates an escape hatch. It tells a story: I only smoke because my current job is unusually stressful, or my genetics are excellent, so the statistics do not apply to me, or life is short, and mental happiness matters more than physical longevity. The mind does not deny the danger of smoking. Instead, it reframes the action so it no longer threatens the person's identity. This is the danger of a highly intelligent mind. The smarter a person is, the more creative and complex their rationalizations become. An intelligent brain is capable of constructing incredibly convincing, beautifully articulated illusions to justify almost any internal contradiction, ensuring that the ego never has to face the painful reality of its own flaws. Alongside rationalization, the ego employs a secondary, equally dangerous mental filter known as confirmation bias. Once the subconscious mind has adopted a specific narrative to protect its identity, It transforms from an objective observer into an aggressive gatekeeper. Confirmation bias ensures that your brain actively searches for, interprets, and remembers information in a way that perfectly aligns with what you already believe, while completely ignoring, forgetting, or misinterpreting anything that contradicts it. If you believe the world is inherently hostile and that people are fundamentally untrustworthy, your brain will instantly highlight every minor act of selfishness you encounter daily, treating it as absolute proof of your worldview. Meanwhile, it will completely overlook acts of radical kindness, categorizing them as rare anomalies or hidden manipulation. This filter is so absolute that two people with opposing worldviews can look at the exact same piece of statistical data and walk away believing the data completely vindicates their separate stances. Your mind does not look at the world as it is. It looks at the world as it needs to be to keep your internal ego safe. Over time, confirmation bias creates a profound echo chamber inside your own consciousness. The longer you live inside this echo chamber, the more rigid your mental constructs become, making it almost impossible for new information to break through the wall of denial your mind has spent decades reinforcing. These abstract psychological filters manifest daily in devastating real-world traps, the most common of which is the sunk cost fallacy. This occurs when a person continues an investment, a career path, or a deeply toxic relationship solely because they have already invested heavily in it, even when it is entirely clear that continuing will lead to further misery. From a purely logical perspective, past investments are gone and cannot be recovered. Choices should be made based entirely on future outcomes. However, the human ego cannot handle the alternative. Admitting that a 5-year relationship was a mistake, or that a university degree you spent thousands on is no longer what you want, requires a massive, painful surrender of your identity. It forces you to admit to yourself, "I was wrong, and I wasted years of my life." To avoid this unbearable wave of cognitive dissonance, your subconscious mind forces you to double down. It convinces you that if you just give it another year, or work a little harder, the situation will miraculously fix itself. You choose to endure months or years of predictable future unhappiness, simply to avoid the immediate sharp pain of admitting a past failure. Your brain traps you in a cycle of suffering, using your past investments as an emotional anchor to prevent you from ever walking away from a sinking ship. We see this exact same self-sabotage playing out in our smallest daily habits and personal routines. Whenever you set a major goal, such as waking up early to exercise, breaking an addiction, or dedicating hours to building a new skill, you are setting an ideal for your identity. But the moment alarm clocks go off, or comfort tempts you, and you choose immediate gratification over your long-term goal, a massive wave of cognitive dissonance strikes. You have directly violated your own identity standards. Instead of facing the reality of your lack of discipline, which causes immediate psychological discomfort, your mind immediately goes to work manufacturing a highly specific excuse. It tells you that you are far too exhausted today, or that the weather is bad, or that you will simply work twice as hard tomorrow to make up for it. This is the anatomy of procrastination. It is not an issue of poor time management. It is an issue of emotional regulation. Your brain uses procrastination and immediate justification to shield you from the uncomfortable truth that your current actions do not match your grand ambitions. By convincing you that tomorrow will be different, your mind allows you to feel the comfort of being a disciplined person today without actually doing any of the difficult work required. It allows you to stay in denial about your habits, keeping your ego entirely safe while your long-term potential quietly erodes. When this internal denial scales up from an individual level to a societal level, it produces the destructive phenomenon of ideological tribalism. Humans are evolutionary driven to seek safety in groups, and we often anchor our entire sense of personal identity to our political, religious, or cultural tribes. When your identity is completely intertwined with a group, Any criticism of that group's beliefs is processed by your anterior cingulate cortex as a direct physical threat to your personal survival. This is why public discourse has become completely broken. When people are presented with factual, undeniable evidence that their political party or cultural ideology made a massive mistake, they do not change their minds. Instead, cognitive dissonance forces them to become deeply hostile. They will instantly label the media outlet as fake news, invent elaborate conspiracy theories to explain away the failure, or quickly pivot to point out a flaw in the opposing tribe to distract from their own discomfort. The ego would rather fracture society into warring factions than endure the psychological weight of admitting its tribe was wrong. This is how entire societies become completely blind to corruption and systemic collapse. When millions of individuals simultaneously use denial to protect their collective egos, truth ceases to matter, and reality is completely replaced by tribal mythology. To definitively prove how easily our minds can be manipulated into altering their own inner beliefs to clear out dissonance, Leon Festinger conducted another legendary laboratory experiment. He placed participants in a room and forced them to perform an incredibly boring, repetitive task for a full hour, such as turning square pegs a quarter turn clockwise over and over again. After the agonizingly dull task was finished, the researchers approached the participants with a request. They asked them to lie to the next waiting participant by telling them that the task was actually incredibly fun, exciting, and highly engaging. However, there was a twist. One group of participants was paid $20 to tell this lie, while another group was paid only $1. Afterward, researchers measured the participants' genuine attitudes toward the boring task. Remarkably, the individuals who were paid $20 easily admitted that the task was incredibly boring. They had a clear, rational justification for their lie. They did it for the money. But the individuals who were paid only $1 experienced severe cognitive dissonance. They had lied, but they couldn't justify it for a measly dollar. To resolve the agonizing friction between seeing themselves as honest people and realizing they lied for almost nothing, their minds adjusted reality. They genuinely convinced themselves that the peg-turning task was actually quite fun. They altered their actual memory of the event to protect their ego. The Festinger experiment proves that your brain will literally rewrite its own memory of past events just to keep your ego comfortable. If you want to break free from this matrix of self-delusion, you must develop the rare capacity for radical self-awareness. You must learn to override your brain's automated neurological defense systems. This begins by changing your relationship with the feeling of psychological discomfort. The next time you are corrected, proven wrong, or confronted with a flaw in your habits, pay close attention to your immediate physical reaction. If you feel a sudden surge of heat in your chest, a wave of anger, or an instant urge to argue, make excuses, or blame someone else, pause completely. Recognize that this reaction is not logic. It is your anterior cingulate cortex firing a pain alarm to protect your ego. Do not let the defense shield go up. Instead of running from the discomfort, lean directly into it. Force yourself to ask a brutal question. Is my defensiveness trying to protect the truth, or is it simply trying to protect my pride? True psychological maturity is not the absence of mistakes. It is the willingness to let your current identity die, so that a wiser, more accurate version of yourself can be born. You must become more attached to discovering what is true than you are attached to validating who you currently are. Accepting your own flaws is arguably the most difficult challenge the human mind can face, because every line of code inside your biology is programmed to fight against it. Your brain wants to keep you comfortable, trapped in the loop of your own repeating narratives and self-justifications, safely shielded from the growth that only comes through discomfort. But now that you understand the hidden mechanisms of denial, cognitive dissonance, and ego preservation, you hold the key to breaking the loop. You no longer have to be a passive prisoner to your subconscious mind's protective delusions. You can choose to step out of the illusion and see your habits, your relationships, and your choices with absolute, unyielding clarity. This journey into the hidden architecture of human behavior is incredibly deep, and your mind uses dozens of other invisible systems every single day to control your reality without your permission. If you are ready to dismantle the rest of these hidden loops, explore the deeper mechanisms of your subconscious, and discover how your brain constructs the world around you, click on the playlist appearing on your screen right now. We have built an entire archive of long-form breakdowns dedicated to helping you see past the illusions of your own mind. Click through, explore the library, and take total control of your psychology.